Yeah, it always makes me smile to bring my old butt on. I'm going to try to wrap up his bio more quickly than usual. He has a newspaper column in Post Media a couple of times a week at least. He's got a blog. He's a trained lawyer, teaches law occasionally at the University of Calgary. He has written many, many books, and he has also run many liberal war rooms, although I don't think he's running any liberal war rooms anytime soon. Warren Kinsella, welcome back to the Charles Adler Show.
Yeah, no, I am not. I just want to stress, as a newspaper columnist, I am not involved in any political party in Canada, nor a member. The only political party I've helped out recently is the Democratic Party in the United States. That's it.
Oh, is that a rule? I mean, you're a
It's
freelancer. I mean, I'm a freelancer with the, my columns appear in the Free Press, but nobody has ever told me not that I do it. I haven't. Last time I was a member of a political party, I think I was 19. So it's not something I do. But there's no rule in any kind of association I have that tells me I can't.
You raise an important point. I think sometimes we in the media business don't give readers and listeners and viewers as much credit as they deserve. Like they know if they're picking up Adler in the Free Press, he generally doesn't like Pierre Poilievre. They picking up Trudeau, they know he doesn't like Justin Trudeau so much. So they get that. I think probably the reason the rule is developed why we shouldn't be members of political parties is it would be an obvious criticism, and a fair criticism is like, well, you're just writing propaganda for your side. And I've gotten in trouble in the past about not disclosing some work my firm was doing for a Conservative Party lawyer. I should have disclosed that.
Would have made my life a lot easier. Would have made my life a lot easier.
Sorry, with the greatest respect, I don't care about what it did to your life. It did a lot to my life.
Oh,
and
I thought you cared about my life.
It was, yeah, of course, but it was a No, I'm trying to be serious here. It was.
No, I know, but go ahead.
It was a mistake, and this is why all of us in this business are giving opinions, even though we're known to be conservative or liberal or New Democrat or whatever. We need to make sure that the reader and the viewer and the listener knows that we're being as straight with them as possible. So it's kind of an ecumenical life, but it's the life that's required of us.
You said earlier that Trudeau, people know that Trudeau isn't for Trudeau or something like that. I think I just want to correct that because people take things literally. You weren't saying Trudeau isn't for Trudeau. I think you were saying that your columns generally aren't.
Yeah, generally not. But, but then again, there's a good example of what we're talking about. Back in 2013, 2012, when he was seeking the Liberal Party leadership, I supported him, and in 2015, I voted for him. The next time I voted NDP, and the time after that, I voted Conservative. So, I think I'm probably like most Canadians. I move around. I tend not now to be a partisan in my old age. And, most people are like me. That's kind of how they vote.
So, Warren, just to be clear then, once again, you did not vote for Stephen Harper in that election where Trudeau was running against Harper. You voted for Trudeau. And then the next time, and I guess it would be Andrew Scheer, you didn't vote Andrew Scheer. You voted for the NDP in that election.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
And then I guess the next time you voted for Aaron O'Toole when it was Aaron O'Toole versus.
I mean, my frame, and I suspect it is for you too, is like I have the privilege of knowing a lot of these people. I can pick up the phone and I can speak to Aaron O'Toole, and so what I'm always looking for is a good heart, somebody who's a good person, and. I don't tend to vote for or try not to vote for assholes or work with assholes. And my view, again, as I've gotten older, when I was younger and more partisan, it was just like, my job was to destroy conservatives, and I was pretty good at it. And, and then I found out that some of them bleed just like me, and they're, not always bad people. And the same with New Democrats, and that liberals aren't always great people. So, I know it drives some partisans crazy, but I think partisans are crazy. So there you go.
Well, a lot of people, because I was known as a conservative, commentator, especially after the time I spent in the States being a conservative commentator. Some people thought it was my job to destroy liberals. I may have. You can speak to me as a former liberal war room guy, and I guess the first time I met you, you were pumping one of your books, and we weren't exactly on the same side of things.
No, as a matter of fact, I was just talking to Brian Lilly about this,
Yeah.
because telling him that I was coming on with you, and I can reveal, like, everybody, Charles Adler hung up on me on the phone once when he was on CJOB, and it was the subject matter. I don't know if you remember this, Charles. It was, the Star Wars thing, right? And, back in those days. And I tended to favor it in one way, because, I prefer wars to be fought in space as opposed
Yes.
to on Earth. But I also said, it's going to lead to an arms race, as it inevitably does. And you got really mad at me, and you cut off the call. So you were a conservative those days, and I was a liberal. But anyway.
All right. So you've destroyed a few conservatives in your day, and I may have destroyed a few liberals. And these days, people go, "What the hell is happening to you guys? Why is Kinsella supporting the conservatives, and why do you often
But I'm not
supporting liberals?"
I'm not, and I've got reasons. I mean, we should talk about it. I've got a column coming out in the Post Media this weekend, and I can't tell you everything that's in it. Obviously, my editor would kill me, and my editor. But
yes, I know Adrian Batra, and I would even though I'd love to have your stuff, on the show right now, like all of it. I'd love to be able to read it and all that. I would probably not support Adrian Batra if she took that position. I support her position 100% as editor of the Sun.
Yeah.
To what's the word? Embargo. I don't like to use that word.
Embargo, yeah.
To embargo your stuff until it
don't
appears.
mess with Batra. But I can kind of tease out some of it because, as you know, something big happened this week, which is Pierre Poilievre dropped and Justin Trudeau went up. And I kind of thought about why that might have happened.
So just to be clear, we had David Coletto on the show earlier this week, CEO of Abacus Data. And Coletto was shocked. I wasn't as shocked, but he was in shock because I guess he's never seen this before. The Conservatives only 2 weeks ago were in the horse race poll, the national horse race poll. The Conservatives were 19 points ahead of the Liberals, and here it is 2 weeks later, and they're only 10 points ahead. So a 9-point drop in 2 weeks is a lot. And Warren's column is coming out in the Saturday edition of Sun Newspapers, Post Media. That's a Saturday edition. Don't know when you're watching or listening to this podcast, but it doesn't matter. I just want everyone to be clear. It'll be on the weekend. And Warren is allowed, Adrian Batra is allowing Warren to give us just a couple of hints.
A taste.
So lift the kimono just a little bit here, Warren.
There are, as in all things in politics, it's never one thing that kills you.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of things. And, I think the first that I talk about in the column is revealed in David Coletto's poll, which is, Canadians are getting to know Pierre Poilievre. They did not really know him a year ago. Within political circles, he was certainly known in the Conservative Party. They find him arrogant. Abacus found about 42% of Canadians find him arrogant. Now, they also, but the same number found him insincere. But, that's a wash because that's what they think about Trudeau too, right? Who cares? They think both of them are bullshitters. But the arrogance thing, like, honestly, because you know how I do politics.
Yeah.
I watch people on TV and I turn the sound off.
Yeah.
And, the body language and just the whole physiology of a candidate. And, Poilievre seems kind of prickly and angry. He seems pissed off all the time.
Well, you called him Warren. On this show 2 weeks ago, you called him a dick.
Yeah, a bit. No, actually, a bit of a dick.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, he. Well, the reason for that is, as I mentioned to you, he was my former boss, Jean Pelletier, or my boss ultimately was Jean Chrétien, but Pelletier was the chief of staff to Chrétien, and he was dying of cancer, and Poilievre called him a liar. And so some of us Chrétien guys never quite forgave that. I know for a fact there's Poilievre conservatives who wish they could have a redo of that one because they realized they made a big mistake in doing that. And that contributes to this perception that people have got of him, which is that he's kind of arrogant and mean. he needs to deal with that. They're obviously dealing with that now. That's why they gone ahead in the polls. But I think that's one reason. The other point I make in the column, Charles, I think they peaked too soon. Like 20 points ahead or whatever ridiculous figure it was. That's great if it's week 3 of the campaign. But if you're a year and a bit away from the campaign, that's peaking way too soon. And you know what I'm talking about.
Drill into that a little bit, Warren, because it's something that I talk about from time to time on the show. And I don't think I can make it as understandable as you can from your political war room perspective. This idea of peaking too early. What is it that peaking too early does to the conversation going forward that is not good for the person who's developed that early peak?
Well, then you're being held to account as prime minister, and he's not prime minister yet, and he doesn't have an ability to defend himself from every attack that's going to come his way. But in his specific case, what's the problem with peaking too soon? Is it allows Trudeau to do exactly what Trudeau's doing, which is say, we've got Donald Trump north over here, and he's talking about MAGA stuff on all the time, and he's doing that for a smart purpose. Trudeau is trying to stampede worried New Democrats away from the New Democratic option. And it's worked for him in 2015, 2019, 2021. He's trying to scare the shit out of New Democrats, saying, look what you're going to get, right? And this is the problem with peaking too soon. You want to be way ahead in week 3 of the campaign when it's too late for the other side to do some remedial work. You do not want it to be happening right now. And I think that's one of the reasons why Trudeau's up and Poilievre's down is you've got so-called progressive voters, this kind of amalgam of liberals and New Democrats going, you know what? I think he's right. I don't like Trudeau. I think he's been there too long, but I think he's right. This Poilievre guy makes me nervous, so I'm going to pull back. And I think that's one of the things that's happened this week.
Warren, you mentioned, and obviously you're going to mention in the column on the weekend for Post Media, that Poilievre has a reputation for being prickly, and that Poilievre has a reputation for being both insincere and arrogant. Okay, so these aren't wonderful virtues for a prime minister. But what about the bullying stuff? I know that conservatives, especially during the convoy era, the anti-vax era, were calling Trudeau a bully. But does Pierre Poilievre, in your mind right now, have a bully problem?
Well, you and I both know we've both lived in the States. I've worked for the Democrats. You've, broadcast about the politics of the United States. Like, we remember when George Bush Sr. was seeking the Republican nomination, he was way behind. He was losing. And he had this wimp factor about him. So he went on TV with Dan Rather on CBS News, and they got into a big fight about Iran-Contra. And just cut a long story short, he kicked the living shit out of Dan Rather. And it made him the Republican presidential nominee, and it actually made him president of the United States. So beating up on the media, as much as I dislike admitting it, because I'm part of the media now, it's good politics. However, you cannot do it every day. You cannot make a habit of it, because then it lends to an impression that you're arrogant, that you're insincere, and that possibly you're afraid of the media and the tough questions they ask. Like that's our job. Those of us who do the opinion stuff and the news stuff, we're supposed to ask dumb questions. So when, Poilievre had his moment, the apple munching moment, that was a home run. And I talk about that in my column this weekend. No question. It was a home run. The reporter showed up and was ill prepared. Charles Adler never shows up ill prepared. Like, everybody thinks you just wing it.
Yeah.
You don't, right?
But when you
prepare.
I got to get in your face a little bit about that. I'm not doubting that Pierre Poilievre knocked it out of the park with that reporter. But let me take you back to George Bush. George Bush didn't take on a no-name guy with no style, with no prep, in an apple orchard. He took on Dan Rather. That's a big thing. If Poilievre had done the same thing to a big-name national reporter or a big-name national anchor, then I'd say to myself, my God, this guy's a lot better than I thought he was. And who knows, he may do
Fair
that
enough.
someday, but he didn't
Fair
do
enough.
that day.
Well, no, and an example of your point is the very next time, Poilievre pulled out, the bat to beat the media like it's a piñata with. He did it with a very well liked younger Canadian press reporter, and she asked him a question at a presser he had just a few days ago about whether he had called that terrible incident that happened on the border in Niagara Falls. He had called it terrorism. And he had, in fact, called it terrorism. In his English question to the prime minister, he attributed it to the media. But in French, he did call it terrorism. And, and like, who cares? Because I think most of us thought it was initially, given what's going on in the world. But he just decided he was going to beat the shit out of this CP reporter. And it was a bad look. And so I think it's exactly an example of what you're talking about, is if you're going to pick a fight with somebody who's your own size. And he has a tendency not to do that. And it's a bad look.
I had an American boss who liked the fact that I liked to fight. And in those days, I really, really did like to fight. And actually, I was a conservative talk show host, so I was fighting with liberals. But one day, I fought with a liberal who happened to be one of the members, I'll call him a member of the Democratic B team. Wasn't a very, very strong liberal. And my boss told me that he would not fire me, but he would fine me severely if I ever was caught that public punching that far below my weight.
Punching
he said,
down.
you got punching above your weight is fantastic. Punching, someone at your weight level, but punching below your weight, as he put it, he was a Texan. He said, that's not being a man.
Yeah, it's not right. And yes. And so that is a problem. Poilievre's gone. And that actually is another point I make in the column. One of the reasons why conservatives love him is like he's tough in question period, and he's tough in committee, and he's tough in scrums, and he's angry and focused. And you got to admit, like, he really is. He's quite good in those places. But as I point out in the column, there's another person who was good in all those ways too, which was angry Tom Mulcair. And the press gallery loved him, right? Because he was just he'd give clips all the time, and he spoke in clips, and he was terrific. And then the public saw him and were kicking the tires. He was supposed to be prime minister, as you would recall. And he got his ass kicked because Canadians decided he was too angry. They don't want you to be angry all the time. For sure, I get the fear button. I've pushed it in a few campaigns. But the better button, the one that you can sustain, is the hope button. It is hard to maintain anger for, years at a time. Right now, the public is angry. There's no question. You look at Biden. How is Biden being beaten right now, as he is, by Donald Trump? Is because people are pissed off. And, so that Trump is a vessel for their anger, much in the way Poilievre is. But they can't sustain the anger forever. The economists are now saying rates are going to drop 2 or 3 times early in the new year. The economists are all saying the economy is bouncing back. Like, things are looking better for the spring. I sound like a political commercial. Things will. It's morning in America.
I have a feeling you're writing one right now.
Yeah, it's morning in America.
Yeah,
but it's at that point people are like, yeah, Poilievre, yeah, he's good in question period. But do I really give a shit about question period? Like, really? Like, who does? So he needs to.
You were warm a couple of weeks ago, Warren, but you're on fire right now. Whatever breakfast you were having, I want to have the same. I want to ask you this. And first of all, just to button down the Mulcair thing. Mulcair was really, really angry with me, because in the days when he thought he'd be, measuring the drapes and become prime minister, because Trudeau at that time was just leader of the third party, and Mulcair was prosecuting, I guess, Harper effectively every day. And as you said, the press gallery loved it. I thought he went too far, and I called him the Grand Inquisitor. And I said that Canadians don't mind having a person in the PMO who's a pretty good prosecutor, but Mulcair's over the top. He's running an inquisition here. And that is a little bit frightening for a lot of people. But here's where I want to take this. I want to take this to the idea that some politicians, and you've worked with them, you've worked with a lot. Some politicians are really good at self-reflection, or at least taking direction and saying, you know what, Kinsella's right about this, or Adler's right about this. Maybe I should make a correction. Here's my question to you. Does Poilievre understand that he comes across as arrogant and as a bully and too much like a grand inquisitor? Can he dial it down? Can he actually make the correction? Because if he can, the future is his, but I'm not sure he can. What does Warren Kinsella think?
Yeah, no, I tend to subscribe to the view, as you know, as our discussions over the years, it's hard to change a grown up, right? How they are is how they are. However, the smart leaders surround themselves with people who are not yes men and yes women. And Poilievre has actually done that. He's got some people in his office who are pretty smart. So an example of what you're talking about is, I think they've said to him, Pierre, you got to just cool it a little bit. Why don't we do this 20-minute video about the housing crisis? And he may have resisted that initially. I don't know if he did, but it was brilliant. Like, it was really good politics. And he explained the issue in a way that people liked. It's had millions and millions of hits. You can't argue with, it was a hit. It was a hit record. So I think he's got people who have said to him, look, you need to cool it in public. Smile more. Let's get your wife out there. Get you out of a tie. Take the glasses off. Laugh. Kind of. He's not at the poking fun at himself and sounding like a regular schmo. But that's the nirvana, right? That's where you got to get to, because that's what Doug Ford did.
Yeah.
And does, and Jean Chrétien and René Lévesque and Ralph Klein and Mel Lastman. Those guys were experts at being a regular schmo and poking fun at themselves. Poilievre needs to get there. If he gets there, he will be a formidable opponent for Trudeau or whoever.
So, Warren, you can agree or disagree. It doesn't matter. Over the years, we've agreed and disagreed on so many things. But here's where you and I may disagree on this. I know all these guys, same, Doug Ford and Ralph Klein, and of course Mel Lastman publicly said one of the reasons he was giving me the keys to Toronto. I'm the only talk show host who ever got the key to Toronto. He said publicly, he said, Adler got me elected, so I gave him the key. I mean, I've never seen that kind of candor and transparency in a politician. So Mel Lastman could laugh at himself, and so could these other guys. But the thing they all had going for them, Warren Kinsella, was they were all extremely self-confident. They didn't have to go to a seminar and learn how to fake self-confidence, looking in the mirror and saying, you're gorgeous, you're Robert Redford, you're Burt Reynolds, you're George Clooney. They didn't do any of that. They had natural, innate self-confidence. And here's where we may disagree. I don't think Poilievre has that. I don't think he's made that way. I don't think he's got any Doug Ford or Mel Lastman or Ralph Klein in him.
No, and that would be fatal were it not for the fact that he's up against a guy who's got all kinds of character flaws as well. Like, the problem with our national politics at the moment, and I know you don't agree with me, or I think you don't agree with me, but I know most people do, all of our federal leaders suck. Like, they suck. It is the worst batch I can recall in my lifetime. I don't feel like I have anybody to vote for. And because I'm profoundly aware of the weaknesses of all three leaders. And so, like, if somebody came along who had those characteristics you just described, it would be a very different environment for Pierre Poilievre and possibly Justin Trudeau. But we don't have that at the present time. We're just not attracting the A team anymore to our national politics. It's like it's the C team. Where's Chrétien gone? Where's Lester Pearson? Where's Pierre Trudeau?
Yeah.
Where's, even Brian Mulroney was a great politician. Where are those guys? They're all gone.
I'm not here to tell you that Trudeau is a great politician. So when you say we'll disagree, we're not going to disagree on that. That's not where the disagreement is. Here's where the disagreement is. Trudeau has natural and has always had natural self-confidence. Trudeau can take a punch, and then he can deliver a right hook, a left hook across, whatever it takes. Trudeau is a fighter. And in a campaign, Trudeau grows half a foot. I'm not sure that Poilievre can do that, but as far as self-confidence is concerned, I haven't taken a poll on it. You haven't taken a poll on it, but you and I have both taken the measure of men and women. I think we'd have to agree that Trudeau has more natural self-confidence than Pierre Poilievre.
No, I don't agree with you. Sorry,
All right.
I don't. Right? I think that he's vain, and I think he's a big phony. And I actually think it's the opposite. I know, I'm not going to get into the stories, but I know for a fact that Justin Trudeau doesn't even like being compared to his dad. He doesn't like being compared to just Jean Chrétien. Because he is intimidated by the record of those previous leaders. So no, he does not have a lot of self-confidence, but neither does Poilievre. Right.
Well,
So
but let
me finish. Let me finish.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
You said you're going to agree with me, Warren. I don't. My experience with arrogant men in particular.
Yeah.
When they're arrogant and loud and brash and obnoxious, it's precisely because they are lack confidence, and they lack the confidence to listen to others and to reach out to other people. And both those guys share that characteristic. I mean, that's why you're seeing this poll Abacus has got saying Poilievre's arrogant. Well, they say Trudeau's arrogant too. I think it's because they lack confidence, not because they've got it.
Well, okay, I'll just button this down with, I have also been in the room with both, and Trudeau strikes me as having much more self-confidence than Poilievre, and on that we'll just agree to disagree.
Well, I mean, has Trudeau's people said to you, you're only allowed to stand on stage with them for 10 seconds?
No, I've never had that rule.
Well, because they do that. They do that.
I don't give a hoot. I've been in the room with them for
more
than 10 seconds.
That's my point.
And
Charles,
I know when a person has self-confidence. I mean, that's not actually.
No, but if you're limiting the exposure, another prominent person has got beside you, what does that say? It means you're not confident.
Well, it's not limited to me, so that doesn't work, Warren. I mean, that would work if that were true for me, and it's not. Never has been.
Well, I'm giving
not the only one who gets to spend more than a few seconds with the Prime Minister.
Yeah, okay.
And my guess is
My
guess is, Warren, if you wanted today to get more than a few seconds with the Prime Minister, regardless of everything you've written, everything you've said, I'm confident you could get that because he's got enough self-confidence to do that.
I'm not. No way.
You think you could only get a few seconds with the PM?
I don't think I could get any seconds. Charles, when I was like sorry.
No, I find this interesting. Go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, I just know for a fact that this guy, maybe it's people around him, but certainly he's licensed them to do this. Yeah. He does not like to be overshadowed by somebody else. He does not. But neither does Poilievre, right? And it's just a bad look. And I think, you need to be able to, in politics, share the stage and say, well, it's not just me. You're getting my team. You're getting my platform. You got to share the love. You got to spread it around. And these two guys, they look like one-man shows, right? Your average person, so the evidence of what I'm talking about, I think, is your average person couldn't name 5 people in Trudeau's cabinet. And that's because the Liberal Party is devolved into a cult of personality. But so is the Conservative Party, right? It's Pierre up top.
I'm listening very carefully, and I'm trying to think, and I may not be the average person because I do this every day, and I read a lot more about politics than the average person, and sometimes I envy the average person who doesn't spend as much time with politics as I do because I find much of it negative. But I'm trying to think whether not the average person, whether I could actually name 5 people in Harper's cabinet, and I was relatively close to them. I could probably get it up to 5. But I think you'd agree, Warren, that the average person could not name 5 people in the Stephen Harper cabinet.
Well, it's 10 years later, man. Like, fuck, I can't remember what I had for breakfast.
No, I'm talking about back then. I mean, he didn't have a galaxy of stars. He had Jim Flaherty, he had John Baird, he had Jason Kenney. After that, it would get difficult, I think, for the average person to name anymore. Anyway, I don't want to bog down on this. This has been a trend. Let's just say it's been a trend for quite a while. The last time, if we're talking about Trudeau, the last time I remember average people being able to name several people in a cabinet was actually Pierre Trudeau's cabinet, and your old boss Jean Chrétien was one of the people that a lot of people could name.
No, Mulroney, Mazankowski, Wilson, Campbell, Clark, no. Harper, Flaherty, and Baird, and Bev Oda, you can. And the way our leadership politics has always been about your leader in large part, but that has become an exaggerated characteristic of our politics now. It's the same with Trump. You can't name anybody who was in his cabinet. It's the same with Biden. It's hard to,
Yeah, it's a trend. It's a trend that's been going on, and it wouldn't matter today whether it's a Pierre Trudeau government, a Justin Trudeau government today, or a Pierre Poilievre government. People wouldn't be able to name many people in the cabinet because the leaders tend to overshadow everyone. How many people can you name? Joe Biden is the guy that you've worked for. How many people can you name, Warren Kinsella, in the Joe Biden cabinet?
Not many. Pete, Mayor Pete is great. Who's the guy who's the Secretary of Defense? He's traveling the world right now. The guy with the military haircut. You've got his Secretary of State. I mean, this is all a function of old age, and I'm losing my mind.
What's his name, Warren? I'm not trying to be a pest you, but
you're being an asshole. You're being an asshole. That's okay. And fuck you, Charles. Fuck you. But no, I can't remember their names right now. So there you go. But you know what? Because you're kind of making fun of me. That's okay. Anybody who's watching us and listening to us, they can't name 5 either. And so my point remains the same, is this is how our politics has evolved, right? And this is how our politics has changed. And maybe it's what people want. Maybe it's a good thing. They just think about Justin Trudeau. They just think about Pierre Poilievre. They just think about Donald Trump. But, I'm not sure it's good for democracy.
So let me just ask you about something that isn't necessarily about Trudeau's cabinet or any of the things that are motivating you to call me a name and that. Let's just end on something a lot brighter. As we head into 2024 and beyond, are you as optimistic as many of the economists are that you referred to earlier? Are you as optimistic that inflation is getting tamed, the pest is being put in the corner, the dog is being put in the doghouse, and times are about to get a lot better for all of us?
I don't know, because something big happened, and it was the pandemic, and it was the biggest economic, political, cultural, and personal event of anybody's life. And it obviously took all the traditional assumptions and just shredded them. So, for example, in our economy right now, we have had massive inflation, but we've also had full employment. That's weird. We've had interest rates. We've had free money for a long time to borrow, and we no longer have that. And people seem to be now adjusting to that. So there's weird things happening in our economies. It's not working for incumbents. Everywhere you look, incumbents are in a bit of trouble because of the state of the economy. But, I'm hopeful that things will come back. And, certainly Justin Trudeau is, because right now, the main reason why Trudeau is losing is the economy and the cost of living and affordability. Poilievre has been ignoring Ukraine. He's been ignoring Israel to a large extent. He's just been zeroing in on pocketbook issues, and it's worked for him. But if the economy starts to come back, it's not going to work for him so well.
So the economy's coming back, and your column is coming back tomorrow. That is Saturday. You mentioned some of the things that are going against Pierre Poilievre. Let's button this one down by asking you what is going in your opinion. Trudeau's coming up a few points. What's working for him?
What's working for Poilievre is I just fatigue about Trudeau. Trudeau has been Liberal Party leader for more than a decade. As of November 4th, he will have been Prime Minister for, what is it going to be, 9 years? Is it?
But my question was what's working for my question was what's working for Trudeau right now.
Oh, sorry, I thought you meant
my apologies. If I did, I apologize. But the question is, because you were talking about
incumbency.
Incumbency is working for him.
Yeah, it's just, you know, you want to be able, like, we're in the area of the low information voter, and I guess I'm one because I couldn't name anybody when you were quizzing me there. And you know, so people, they're busy in their lives, they don't have a lot of time for politics, so they're just focused on the leader, and they may know two or three things that the leader is up to. And so impressions are really important. And you know, whether you like him or not, Trudeau, it's, you don't have to be theoretical about him being prime minister. He's been prime minister for a decade, and so it's incumbency kind of works for him. Whereas for Poilievre, people are going, "Can I picture that guy as prime minister? Can I picture him on the world stage? Can I picture him at the G20? Like, how's he going to do?" It's harder to do that because he hasn't held the job yet. So incumbency is a real advantage that Trudeau's got right now, and I think that's one of the reasons why he's doing better in the polls.
I agree with you there, Warren. I think when people are disgruntled and antsy and pissed off and a whole lot of things, sometimes they do end up traveling. Not on any given day. On any given day, they can be delighted by something Poilievre said and whatever. But in general, a lot of people end up going to the big brand, and I do think that your former boss had that going for him. He
Yeah,
was up
and
against Stockwell Day and a bunch of other, I'll just call them political dwarfs. And next to those political dwarfs, the big brand, Jean Chrétien, he was the big guy.
yeah, and the brand point you make applies to the parties as well. You know, Liberal Party of Canada, and again, you can hear conservative heads exploding, but the Liberal Party of Canada is the most successful political machine in Western democracy. It's won many more elections than it's lost, and it's been in power many more years than any of its opponents. And so it's a fool's errand to underestimate them. And that's one thing I'll give Poilievre credit for. He does not underestimate Justin Trudeau. His focus is 100% Trudeau, and he doesn't pay much attention to Jagmeet Singh. He doesn't see him as the threat. So the Liberal Party has got brand affinity. People feel comfortable in Canada with the Liberal Party of Canada, not presently, but historically, the Liberal Party of Canada has got the best brand in politics.
Would you say that one thing that makes the Liberal Party in general, and I don't want to focus exclusively on today, but in general, one of the things that makes the Liberal Party the big brand and a little more secure, a little more self-confident than the Conservative brand, the Liberal Party never seems to be paranoid of its own base. Agree or disagree with that, Warren?
That's an interesting question. Like, you mean like have confidence in their base, or
Yeah, have confidence that the base will abandon it on any one issue. It just seems that the Conservatives are always
I see what you
worried
mean.
about their most loyal supporters, and they will make sure that they
They throw them a bone.
yeah
Yeah,
they're always throwing them away. It's one of the things that I found offended a little offensive to me as a person who was supporting the Conservatives. Like, stop pandering to me.
I think you're right now that I think of it, because Poilievre, you know, so why does he, you know, beat up on the media as often, or why did he feel a need? You know, I talk about this in the column too, like voting against a free trade agreement with Ukraine. Zelensky came here at great personal risk in October to sign that thing. He wanted it. You know, and their excuse was, you know, we're imposing a carbon tax on Ukraine. Ukraine has got a carbon tax already. So it was dumb politics. Why did he do it? Because I think it's evidence of what you're talking about. He feels the need, and he's not the only conservative leader who's done this, to throw a bone to the base so he doesn't lose them. Maybe he's worried about Maxime Bernier. I don't know why, but maybe he is. Whereas Trudeau has less of a concern about that. I mean, that may be why Trudeau did the dental plan that you get when you're 87 years old or something like that. Probably he more did it because that's what Jagmeet Singh wanted as a condition of his support. But I think you tend to be right now that I think about it, is Trudeau's got more confidence, to use that word we've been talking about, in his base than Poilievre has in his. Poilievre seems to be nervous about losing his base, and Scheer and, well, certainly O'Toole lost his base, was one of the reasons why he lost.
Warren, I know that there were moments in this conversation that we had today where you were very miffed with me, and you called me an
No, I
a-hole and all those.
wasn't. Don't
Well,
be.
listen,
Stop.
I want to thank you for the honesty, because there are many conversations where I have with people where they feel I'm being that way, and I might indeed be that way, but they never tell me that during the conversation. They just kind of stab me in the back like some media and some political types
Oh yeah.
are want to do. You
No,
tell me
listen.
to my face, and I appreciate that.
Listen. I love you. You're my brother of another mother, and I mean it. And you know, and you're not an asshole. Like I was just trying to get you to stop talking for a minute. Like, you know, you just but you know, you got me, right? And you said, okay, big shot, name the names, and I couldn't. So and that's fair ball, right? We did, like, I don't know if you remember '93, Peter Zosky did it to Kim Campbell.
Yes,
You remember that?
did.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I do.
just here is
I
an
do.
old war room
Yeah.
story. Zosky gets Kim Campbell on and says to her, "How much is a liter of milk?" We didn't know. And I just about shit my pants. I turned to my guys and I said, go out, because I didn't know what it was either. I said, go out and buy a fucking liter of milk and make sure
Right.
the plane knows about it in case the leader gets asked about it. And of course he was. So, you know, gotcha in politics. I've played it lots of times over the years, and it's fair game. So,
You know, it's
fair for you to
interesting you
do it.
mentioned that, Warren, because some of my Republican friends made fun of me when I was living in the States, because I drove a relatively modest car, and I did a lot of my own shopping, my dry cleaning, and a lot of things that some so-called stars have other people doing for them. And they made fun of me for that. And I said, look, the only way that I can stay close to the common person is to stay the common person that I grew up as much as possible. And regardless
Yep.
of awards and, you know, all those material things, I have to behave the way I always did. Otherwise, I will lose touch. They made fun of me. I don't care. I was never wrong. I don't think I was ever wrong about that. But a lot of politicians who actually do grow up in a very, very common life, they fall in love with the perks. They
Well, look
fall
at
in love with the
Mulroney.
idea of having a staff. Go ahead, Warren, please.
Yeah, look at Mulroney as example of what you're talking about. He comes from this little town in northern Quebec. It's a lumber town, and you know, with dirt under their fingernails. And next thing you know, he's taking envelopes from a guy in a bathroom at the Pierre Hotel in New York City. Like, so yeah. But you know, the politicians I worked for, the ones that were successful, were guys like Chrétien. Chrétien would enter an event through the kitchen. He'd
Yep.
get out of the cab.
I remember that. Yeah.
And he'd come in and he'd talk to the the cooks and the wait people and stuff, and they all remember it, right? And so the great ones are the ones who keep their feet planted firmly on the ground, because if they don't, they're going to end up below the ground.
Extremely well said. That'll be the last word, except for this. I need to ask you this question. How many milliseconds would Mila Mulroney allow you to have with Brian?
Well, I like Ben and Mark. I know them.
I know. Yes.
I don't know. Probably none. Nobody likes me. Nobody likes you. You're never going to have me. Yeah, you're never going to have me on again because I was mean to you.
No, you know I don't play the game that way.
But like, you know, in our business, our job is to come down from the hills and shoot the wounded. So that's what we do.
All right. So you'll be shooting some of the wounded tomorrow in your column in Post Media, and we'll get you to, I guess, lock and load next Friday, if that works for you.
That's good, and I'll have more battery acid for breakfast. How's that?
That's beautiful. You're a beautiful guy. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
KInsella, author, lawyer, columnist for Post Media. His next one is coming out on Saturday, December 16th. Thank you for joining me, and thanks for telling your friends. Spotify, Apple, doesn't matter to me. As you know, I love doing what I do, and I love doing it with you. I love you very much. Thank you, Canada. I'm Charles Adler.